Before we get started with today's episode of the Socratic Cinema podcast, it's that time of the month, and we want to take a minute to shout out our favorite, lovely, loyal patrons. So thank you so much to Samuel Copeland, Emma Rudder. I'm talking to John Delicious. I'm talking to Rachel DeLemon. Who wrote these patron notes? Whoever they did had a bias against the Delicios, is all I'm going to say. Anyways, Charlie?
It wasn't me. I love the Delicios.
Look, Delicios, your names are too fun to play around with, okay? I'm going to start putting them in all the descriptions. You guys can see them as like Easter eggs. It'll be fun. Don't worry.
Yeah, like it'll say John DiGiorno or who knows.
Well, you guys are Italian. I wouldn't go that far. It's a little, little on the edge, just saying.
Right. Well, thank you so much, patrons. You guys mean the world to us, and you're helping us to do bigger and better things with the podcast of the Millennium, Socratic Cinema. So if you want to join the movement, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/Socratic Cinema, and you can get fun perks like having us make bad puns out of your last names and other things of that nature. So, consider if you like the podcast, consider becoming a patron. If you don't like the podcast, maybe consider becoming a patron to spite us. I really recommend that. I'm looking at the one guy who thumbs down our Pacific Rim highlight clip. I'm looking at you. Become a spite Patreon. A Spitreon? I don't know. Anyways, thank you so much. And without further ado, enjoy the episode. Bye.
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 Pay us. This week on Socratic Cinema, literally I said that to my mom as we were watching, and she went, huh. And I've never felt more accomplished in my life.
I think hit a lot of the main movies of the theme and main themes of the movie, not movies of the theme. But this is turning into a Grapes of Wrath debate really fast.
I know. I was like, dang, a Socratic smackdown.
On the Grapes of Wrath.
Oh,
It's not an episode of the Socratic Cinema podcast if Charlie and I don't disagree on something.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Socratic Cinema. My name is Charlie Heatherly.
My name is James DeLisio.
And I'm Kasey Clark.
And today we have a very special episode for you guys because this movie is an Oscar contender and has made history in a couple different categories. I'm, of course, talking about the wonderful Minari.
Yeah.
Hype. Woo. When I say that it made history, I really do mean it because I believe it was Steven Yeun who got the Best Actor nod in the Oscars category. He's the first Asian American to do that, I'm pretty sure, which is number one, insane, because I feel like that should have happened a super long time ago. But number two, really good. And I'm glad that we're finally breaking some boundaries in that regard, because at the Golden Globes, a little bit of drama about Minari that we will totally talk about today. But I would rather talk about everybody's opinions on the movie first. James, would you like to go?
I would love to go. So I watched Minari the other day with both of my parents, and I've had my eye on this movie for a little bit. We are starting to gear up and get into Oscar mode for this year. You may have noticed we talked about another Best Picture nominee, Judas and the Black Messiah, and so we're on a quest now to watch a lot of Oscar noms, and maybe if we watch enough, we'll do another awards prediction discussion like last year. It was pretty fun, I thought. But I've had my eye on Minari for a while. It looked like a film that would be sort of my speed. I'm very into simple life, out in nature. Kasey and Charlie know this about me.
Yeah.
I'm all about the nature. But so I thought this movie would be perfect for me, and it just looked very appealing. And it's A24, so it's gonna be very artsy and tasteful. And I watched it, and it was exactly that. It was the tagline on the poster said, "This is the movie we need right now," and I agree, because it's a movie that, while it does portray a lot of the hardships of not assimilation but integration, I guess, and immigration and integration into American society in the 80s for this Korean family, it's a very joyful and hopeful movie, I think. And that was very refreshing. I was reading some reviews talking about how Minari is sort of unique in that it's one of those rare sorts of films by minorities about minorities that's not just focused on their pain, which really struck me when I read that, because I mean, you don't really think about that, but a lot of times, when these sorts of movies from more marginalized communities come out, a lot of the times these stories are about their pain, and that can be really tiring, I think. I mean, look at Judas and the Black Messiah. That movie was definitely tiring is a word emotionally exhausting. I think we all agreed on that. But
Mm.
Minari, I think it was maybe not a bold choice to sort of give us a lighter perspective, and I really appreciated a lot of the messages about community and family, and even a weird sort of American dream story, like that I wouldn't have expected necessarily. I thought this movie would be more of a criticism of the American dream, but it's almost a celebration of that idea, to me at least. That's how I read it. Um,
Interesting.
Mm.
yeah, I expected it to be more satirical, and it really wasn't. It was very pure. Um, and I just really thoroughly enjoyed the film. I'll pass it on to Kasey.
Yeah, I think James, you really like excuse me, you really like hit it right on the head. Like I feel like after watching movies like Judas and the Black Messiah, like all these movies that focused on the journey of sort of like minorities, kind of the integration into American culture or just their struggles in American culture. Like there were several times throughout the movie where I was just like, oh no, something bad is gonna happen. Something bad's gonna happen. Like someone's gonna get bitten by a snake and it's all gonna fall apart. And I was just waiting for something like horrible um to happen. But the main like bad thing, apart from like the constant arguing, but probably the main bad thing where like the produce gets set on fire, like that was more of like a relief, like that was a relief of like a stressor that had been weighing kind of down on the relationship, and you didn't really feel it as a complete like negative, which I thought was really, really nice. Like as James was saying, A24, absolutely beautiful movie. Like the beginning of it, I was getting very My Neighbor Totoro, like having them
Oh,
like move
for
Yes.
in and like
sure, yeah.
exploring. And I was like, oh yes. And then it was just really a really, really great movie. Like as James was saying, like there's a lot of like nods to struggle, but that's not necessarily like the whole point of the movie. Like there's definitely themes of like preservation, and then you see how as immigrants there's a sort of sense of overwhelming like a veil of distrust, like they're not necessarily always out to like be putting themselves out there and like trusting people. Like they have like maybe like one adult friend, even though that's like kind of showing as their like loneliness in that kind of like self preservation survivalist
Mhm.
wanting to save money, but also wanting to like do it themselves because they can't necessarily like trust that they're not going to get ripped off because of their race, or they're not going to get taken advantage of. And I thought that it was a really beautiful way of showing like the relationships. Like I love the grandma. Oh, grandma,
Yeah,
best.
she
Yes.
deserved
She was
that
so
supporting
good.
actress. Yeah, she acted her
Yeah.
heart out.
Yeah, just the performances in general were just really, really good, and I really enjoyed the movie.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you two really enjoyed the movie. That's great for you. Time to stir the pot. It's Charlie
Here it
time.
Woo
comes.
woo.
We need like
Okay.
a Agatha. It was Agatha all along style song.
Exactly. I need a villain intro. Okay. I would like to say I did not hate Minari. I did not love Minari. I don't know what I thought of Minari. To me, when I was watching it, I felt content the entire time. Like there was not a point in the movie where sort of my enjoyment bar either went up or went down. It was just very static the entire time. And I think that's mainly due to the movie's pacing. Actually, before I go into the negatives, let's talk about the positives here. I think that both of you are right. I think that this movie is incredible in the sense that this is an immigrant story that is not necessarily focusing on all of the sort of racism, or it's not centering on the racism or the very negative aspects of immigrants' lives, because that is a very big part. And the movie did totally not like, shove that aside and not talk about it at all. If we remember the church scenes where the family has to interact with some of the white children that go to the church, Lots of yikes
Oh,
stuff
God.
going on there.
Yeah.
Stop me when I say a word in your language. Like, dude, really? Are you
And
kidding
went
me?
straight into the ching. I was like, oh
Yeah,
no.
Yeah.
it was bad. It was bad. So this movie, although it doesn't focus on that, it still has that in there, which I think is a very important thing.
Yeah.
But or go ahead, James. Did you have something to say?
No, I'm just agreeing, just giving
Okay,
my
sure.
support.
But the coolest thing to me, and I think the area that I disagree with James in, I don't think that this is necessarily a movie that is upholding the American dream. I think that it's showing how the American dream collides with the idea of family. Because we see in this movie that the American dream that Steven Yeun's character is trying to reach for, it's tearing his family apart essentially. He keeps picking the farm over his family, and he keeps trying to grow this farm at the cost of all of their living conditions. I mean, water is running dry because of the fact that he has to use it all for the crops, things like that. And his family's crumbling around him because of the efforts and the work that he is doing. So I think that what this movie is really trying to figure out is how do you keep a healthy relationship while also pursuing that American dream in a very capitalistic country? How do you reconcile those two very different things and make sure that your time is spent, as efficiently as possible, managing both? Which is why I'm interested to hear what you guys think about the ending of the movie, because I need to sort out in my brain what happened there.
And I have some points about the ending too. I have some.
Great.
I hope to bring some enlightenment.
Great.
Oh, yes.
I want to. Sorry. Let me know that you finish.
Okay, sure. So two last things. Number one, I think that the title Minari is very good because I was trying to figure out what that meant the entire time. Like, why Minari? Okay, it's an herb. Like, what does that mean? The grandma describes Minari as a plant that can grow anywhere, and it grows like a weed. It's that resilient. And I think that comparing the hard work and dedication of immigrants to the plant Minari is such a beautiful metaphor. Saying that immigrants can grow anywhere and overcome any sort of challenge or environment is a beautiful way to sort of describe the way that they have to constantly push forward all the time, no matter what the situation might be, no matter what the economic troubles might be. And I think that the movie does a great job at showing that. So love the title. I think that was, a really great thing. My biggest problem with the movie, I think, is the pacing. This movie's pacing to me feels a bit meandering. Namely because a lot of the major plot points you think are going to happen, like the kid's heart, you feel like it's going to give out at a couple different points, and that adds tension. It never does. So they're constantly building up these scenes where you have a lot of tension going in, and then it doesn't really get resolved. It just goes away. Oh, he's fine. His heart problem didn't actually kick in, right? There's not a point where he passes out and people need to deal with that. His heart just gets better, which I suppose is fine if we're going for a slice of life story. But just as a viewer, it felt like nothing was really happening until the very end of the story, when the crop failure started happening, or he started, bringing the crops over to the other people's stores, until plot events happened. I was very much and we're still doing stuff. We're still living down in Arkansas. What's happening here? But yeah, so I think that's my biggest problem with the movie. But everything else I thought was very beautiful. It's shot wonderfully. It's acted wonderfully. And I actually want to talk about Steven Yeun's acting. I'm not really sure if I would give him a best actor nod for that. Because
Really?
I thought he was good, but I don't know. I think that there's probably some subtleties that I missed out on.
Yeah,
he very
I
much
don't-
embodied the character, but I don't know.
He did. This year's weird for me because I don't think I've seen enough really good movies, new movies that came out this year, to have a good grasp. Last year we saw most of the noms for everything, and just a lot of movies in general. So I had a very more clear idea of okay, these guys are clearly the best. These guys are clearly not as good.
Mhm.
But this year, anytime I see a good movie, I'm just wow, okay, sure, yeah, best actor, great. Yeah, because I
Sure.
don't have anything to judge it off of. I think in general, I would probably give Judas and the Black Messiah Best Picture over Minari. I think just objectively, but I really liked it still nonetheless. And I was a big fan of Yeun's acting. I thought the actress who played the grandma absolutely deserved.
Yes, agreed.
Totally deserved.
Yes.
Did the Oscars have there's no child actor for the Oscars? There is for Golden Globes though, right?
There
Yeah.
is, yeah, there isn't for the Oscars, but there's for the Golden Globes, and Alan S. Kim got it for the Golden Globes.
Oh yeah, he killed it. He
He
totally
is
did.
so
Mhm.
good.
He did really well.
I want to. I guess we can start our discussion. I don't know. I want to kind of respond, I guess, or give my explanation, I guess, for some of the points Charlie brought up. I know you mentioned that the sort of, I guess, undercutting of the tension kind of bothered you, or felt, I guess, not as satisfying.
Yeah.
And to me, that was almost more satisfying, that because I'm so used to these sorts of stories of downtrodden people just being one terrible thing after another, and it's a very emotionally taxing journey, and then there's a glimmer of hope at the end. But in this, I kind of I think it's maybe just situational because of the year, but for me, seeing a film like, I think we've been so conditioned for like pain in our stories, just horrible things happening. And so it was like, I found myself tensing up so often during this movie. Like Kasey was saying, whenever they found like, when they went to the white evangelical church, I was like, oh gosh, this is gonna be bad. They're gonna get totally ostracized. Or whenever
Mhm.
Paul came on screen, I was so scared, like, oh, he's gonna hate crime them, or the
Yeah.
kid's gonna die and they're not gonna have money, and this is just gonna be so awful and hard and like totally grapes of wrath. But it wasn't. And I was like, I didn't mind seeing a story where these people can like catch a break sometimes and start building a new life. It was just refreshing to me to see that. I don't know, Kasey. I don't know. I know you kind of talked about the same thing. It was a nice change of pace for me to not have something that was so constantly tense and emotionally taxing.
Yeah, it was. I agree with you, James. It was just really, really nice to not like,
Yeah, nice
not,
things.
yeah, nice things
It's nice
happen
to
to
be
good
nice.
people. Like they're not like, they're just, because I feel like in a lot of these like journey movies, as I was saying in the opening, that's like these are good people trying their best, and just the American system keeps smacking them around simply because of who they are. And so it's like it's nice to see that as kind of a umbrella thing, but we're focusing on the things underneath the umbrella. Like it's
Yeah.
still there.
Mhm.
We see these like not great, like they're not like horrendous, but they're just kind of uncomfortable, like the church scene, like that scene. Oh like I was
But
just like,
yeah.
oh
But
no.
that's pretty much the worst that it gets in terms of like,
Yeah.
which is weird because compared to something like Judas and the Black Messiah, that's a pretty you know, like, it's a pretty non-offensive. I mean, it's offensive, obviously, and that's the point, but it's like no one there had any ill intentions, really. It's what
Yeah.
that scene kind of struck me because there's these kids being like super racist, but then like at the end of each of their interactions, they're like, "So we're friends, right?" And it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
"What?" Like
Oh
these people
man.
weren't. There was no like they weren't ill intended. They're just ignorant, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that was something I've read in some interviews with the director, Lee Isaac Chung, and he said like a big thing he wanted to do is like make sure that no one was just a caricature. Like no one's just the racist white guy or no one's just the hardworking immigrant dad. Like
I
everyone
love that.
has
Yeah.
dimensions. Yeah, and I really did like that. And it was, I mean, even characters who in a different, in a different minority story, to for lack of a better term, would be horrendous racist offenders like Paul, the kind of weirdo evangelical Christian neighbor. He turns out to be like this rock, and like source of support, and really the only person in the Yi family's corner, and really was a positive influence on them. I really really liked Paul's character. He was a very fun to watch on screen. I loved
Agreed.
how weird he was.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
super kooky.
Mhm.
yeah, and yeah, so I think this film took a really interesting approach to like Charlie was saying, it didn't ignore the race problems that immigrants faced, but it took a different approach, I think, and its concern wasn't really telling a story about racism. It was a story about people and a culture and learning a new way of life.
Yeah.
which I thought was very refreshing.
I would entirely agree with that. I think you guys hit it right on the head when you're saying, and especially for Lee Isaac Chung to say that he didn't want anyone to be a caricature. I think that's so important for this movie because it really does add a lot of depth and emotion to see characters like Paul, end up being really great. And I think the scenes like in the church where you expect to have a lot of tension and then that sort of all gets, undercut. I think that those are very genius scenes, and those are scenes that really played with my emotions pretty well. And literally, my mom and I watched this with my mom. We were on the edge of our seats watching because we're like, oh, what's gonna happen? Oh, it's something bad. But I think that my problem specifically with the boy and his heart, and this is something that I actually talked about in our Over the Moon episode, is passive versus active development for overcoming challenges. Because my problem with the kid is that and you see this at the cardiovascular specialist's like office where they all congratulate him for doing such a good job with his heart. He didn't do anything. Like that just sort of cleared up on his own, which is like fine, and that's like probably medically how it would happen, but it's character development where the character didn't really have to do anything to solve his problem. Like he just sort of existed. And I guess you could say that like doing all that stuff with his grandma was like the activity that he needed and that he shouldn't have been doing that, but he was. I don't feel that necessarily. I feel like that's sort of a stretch if that's what they were going for. And I would have liked to see him, running a bit more, stumbling and falling, getting back up, more visual representations of that struggle rather than just implying that going down to the creek and carrying buckets with your grandma's hard. Because that's actually what she said was difficult for him, but they didn't even show that on screen. They didn't show him carrying those two big buckets.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
so I didn't get those moments that I would have liked to see him develop his character in an active rather than passive way.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm with you there. I think that scene of him running to get grandma at the end was really, really poignant and really powerful.
So good.
Like that was almost a tearjerker for me.
Yeah.
And maybe if we didn't know that his condition was like getting better at that point, it would have been better. Because there's like, okay, because then you get the 2-in-1 of reconciling his two main character sort of issues to overcome, which is his heart and the thing with grandma. So that would have been a nice way to resolve both of those in one. But because you already know that he's getting better, it's kind of it undercuts the impact of him really running. So I'm with you there. I think what I got out of that doctor scene is. I think it's implying there that being out in Arkansas is good for him, right? Like the fresh air and all that. Because he says, whatever you're doing, don't change a thing. And my dad and I both like laughed at that because it's like, wow, the mom. I'm sorry, I should be using character names. It's Monica. Wants to get out so badly and is like, oh look, this is gonna be bad for David. He shouldn't be running like this. And it's sort of this little source of irony where it's like, oh no, this place is good for them, whether they realize it or not.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I agree. I would have liked to see some more scenes of him being active and stuff. There's a lot of, I love all these characters. I want to see more scenes of all of them, really.
True. And I think you actually bring up a good point with the grandma relationship because that was done beautifully. Everybody with the grandma saying like, you're not a real grandma. You swear, you gamble, you play games. Like such a wonderful way to just add in that character and to create that natural tension. And you felt the entire time for that grandma after she had that stroke. Like, oh my God, that was so brutal when she set the fire to the place. Spoilers, by the way. I don't know why you'd be watching an episode about this if you didn't think there'd be spoilers. But like everything that happened there was so just, it really hit you, especially at the very end of the movie when you see the grandma just completely despondent after realizing what she did. And setting fire to that entire place. Like it's absolutely brutal. In fact, I would have liked to I think you're right. I just wanted to see more of that because the movie ended a bit abruptly.
It did. It could have benefited from some more falling action.
Although I think it's also a good, creative choice to end it like, okay, and we try again and we rebuild. And the assumption is that you go through that whole process again. And that's sort of like the immigrant story is like, you try, you fail due to X, Y, or Z. and then you come back and you do it again, and you don't stop working and you don't stop working until you finally, succeed.
Now, I don't want to interrupt anybody, Charlie, but that's the key right there. That whole idea of like, you sort of to use, I guess, like Joseph Campbell, hero's journey terms, like, you have the death, your resurrection, and you go again. And that's the point of the Minari. I didn't realize this at first because they never said it in the movie, but I was doing more reading after about the significance of Minari. And the director described Minari as a plant that is unique in that it grows best its second year. After the crop has died and come back is when it grows the best.
That's so good.
It's so good. So the
That's
whole
really
film,
good.
I mean, you were right with the point about how it can grow anywhere. That's totally it. But that really is what made me think like, okay, yeah, I get it. Because I agreed that the plot was kind of static at first, and I didn't really, whatever. It didn't feel like it was moving super strong in any one direction or another. But then when I got that, it sort of put the pieces together. Like this is year one, and sort of the resolution and hope of the movie is that, having gone through these hardships and having lost everything but saved their relationship. Because I think it's implied that the mom's not going to move back to California by the end of the movie.
Yeah.
I think their shared ordeal with the burning of the barn, kind of brought them together. And now, now they will really hit their stride, and going forward, there will be hope. So that Minari connection is huge. I'm glad you got it.
Woohoo! I
did
did it. I did it. I got one symbol. I'm a real film reviewer, Mom.
Yeah.
Finally. No,
Yeah,
like or go ahead,
no,
Kasey.
go. No, you can go, Charlie.
Okay. I'll just say one quick thing about that Minari. Literally, I said that to my mom as we were watching, and she went, "Huh." And I've never felt more accomplished in my life. Like to make somebody go, "Oh," like
yeah.
I felt
Heck
something
yeah.
deep within me, deep within me.
I just wanted to, because we're on the topic of like the relationships between everyone, we obviously have the grandma and David's relationship, and that's like amazing, I thought, because it is like the grandma is kind of a overarching kind of sense of tension, because even before she comes, like David's like, oh well, you guys fight over grandma, and then when she comes, like he has this very like seems very I can't necessarily say Eurocentric, but you know how like in American media, like you always have like grandmas baking cookies, doing all this stuff, like as he was saying. And when she like didn't fit that, then he's like saying all these like near like semi like xenophobic like stuff to
The
her. And it's
internalized xenophobia.
Yeah, the internalized xenophobia. It's so crazy because I feel like the like dichotomy of like saying that to his grandma who's like come from Korea versus like how the family kind of upholds their Koreanness and like feeling like, oh, we are kind of like preserving our culture, but someone that's more connected, to that culture, because she literally like, came from Korea like them, but it just seems like she was more like entrenched in it, and now them being more removed from it, as James was saying in the beginning, like talking about how American like society and how like predatory it is, and how it essentially can start breaking people apart. And I feel like it's just great how they kind of did that breaking apart through the separation of culture and how they like treat each other. It's very interesting to me.
Ladies, gentlemen, everyone else, welcome back to another Patreon Q&A from my boy, Sammy Copeland. That's right, the man, the myth, the legend. This week, he is coming at us with the question, does the crew have any guilty pleasure movies they might one day review? He lists Paul Blart Mall Cop, Face Off, pretty sure that one was Spider-Man. James might have changed it, a little bit of bias there. etc. So I think we'll start off with Kasey here. Do you have any guilty pleasure movies that a lot of people might not like, but you just really enjoy?
Yes, I do. And I have to thank my father for showing this to me as he did with Face Off. You know, he just has gems, you know, just gems. So I would say that my guilty pleasure movie would be Empire Records. It's, if you don't know what it is, it's like it's surrounding this group of teens that work in a record store called Empire Records, which is going to be bought by a chain store and completely lose all of its, you know, uniqueness as a independent record store. So it follows this group of teenagers and how they try to save the store, and it's a really cool movie. It got 31% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Ow.
But I thoroughly enjoy it. It was released in 1995, so you have all of the cool kids. You got Liv Tyler in there. If you know, you know. And I think a decent runner-up would be Can't Hardly Wait, too, as a different movie.
I've heard of neither of those.
Me
but
neither.
I'm sure they're both
Well,
horrible.
I feel so
but also
niche.
lovely. You're an indie kid, Kasey.
I am an indie kid.
Your Spotify list has songs that people have never heard of, I'm sure.
Wow. Honestly, yeah.
I'm so indie, I don't even have Spotify. That's my flex.
I don't
of the
even
year.
have Spotify. I have records.
Let's go. Okay. Oh my God, you are an indie kid. Jesus.
I was totally joking.
Yeah, I don't know. But James, what is your guilty pleasure movie?
So I had two written down. And then in a moment of clarity while Kasey was talking, like the clouds parted and the real answer got beamed into my head. I was going to go with pretty lukewarm guilty pleasure movies like Speed Racer or the Jaden Smith Karate Kid.
Yes.
Step aside. It's got to be Bedtime Stories with Adam Sandler.
What?
Wow.
What are you talking about?
Yes. You've
Casey,
never seen.
You know what I'm talking about, Casey?
I'm on. Yeah.
Bedtime
I know what you're
Bedtime
talking
Stories
about.
with Adam
Got a
Sandler?
27%
That
on Rotten
god awful
Tomatoes.
guinea pig.
It's a great movie. Listen, hotel handyman Skeeter Bronson, Adam Sandler, gets an unexpected surprise when he discovers that the tall tales he's been telling his niece and nephew are somehow coming true. That sounds pretty cool, right? And it says the children's unexpected
Yeah.
consequences to the stories turn Skeeter's life upside down. It's so. I watched this movie like 8 times in a row on a road trip once. I love it.
Damn.
Yeah. So
Oh, jeez.
gotta be Bedtime Stories with Adam Sandler. I rest my case.
That is bold. I actually had a
Wow.
very similar parting of the clouds just now, James, because what I was going to say is the Hobbit trilogy. Because even though it's pretty highly reviewed by the audiences on Rotten Tomatoes, if you watch a Lord of the Rings movie, you will probably already like it because you're just that kind of nerd. But I think the real choice and the best choice here is G-Force, the 2009 Disney film where
yes.
a group of hamster specialists have to go in and infiltrate compounds like little tiny rodent spies.
That is big.
It's big.
Wow.
Stacked cast, let me tell you. Zach Galifianakis, Penelope Cruz, Will Arnett, Nicolas Cage, Sam Rockwell, John Favreau. It is like ensemble.
Will Arnett.
And they're all, Will Arnett.
Dang.
Lego Batman himself. Arrested Development himself. Like, this
Wow.
movie had such a star-studded cast, I don't even think, like, they knew what to do with it. I think that's why all the critics were so confused. They're like, there's so much power here. But I think that in G-Force, they, subtly implemented all of these people into the beautifully animated hamster bodies that they inhabited. And they really
Guinea pig.
took the nuances of their performances. Guinea pig, hamster, I don't try and be specious over here. I don't try and put people in the
semantics
boxes.
at that point.
Yeah. Hey, when they're spies, I don't see species. Okay, Kasey? I just want to tell you that. When someone's doing a job
Amen.
for the good of the USA, I don't see that.
All right.
Colorblind.
I'm colorblind to hamsters and guinea pigs.
Yeah, the color here we're talking about is the fur of the hamsters and guinea pigs. Don't get the wrong idea.
It's actually hair, so get it right.
Okay, I just said we're not getting into semantics. I just.
But that's my choice. That's my choice is G-Force.
So there you have it, Samuel. He said we review them one day. To be honest, we already just reviewed my guilty pleasure movie, and also Charlie's and Casey's. I'm overruling them and saying Face Off was their guilty pleasure movie. We already spent those points, so maybe in the next season. But thank
My
you.
rights are being taken away.
I am. I'm
Yeah.
infringing your rights. Yes, you got that right.
Damn.
Yeah. Seriously, thank you so much for the question, Samuel Copeland. We love you. Thank you so much. And if you want to have your question, you know what to do. Go to patreon.com/Socratic Cinema and support your local podcast. Thanks again. And let's get back to the Minari talk. I think it's gonna get pretty interesting now. So stay tuned. Bye. Yeah, the relationship between David and the grandma, I think, hit a lot of the main movies of the theme and main themes of the movie, not movies of the theme.
There we
Um,
go.
you know, there's sort of the disparity between the older generation and the younger generation, because I think the kids, it's really interesting, sort of the cultural. You see different levels of Americanization in each generation of the family. So you have the grandma who's the most deeply entrenched in Korean culture and the most traditional. And she brings all these things from Korea that to the more Americanized children seem very foreign. And so they don't like it. And then you have the parents who are somewhere in between trying to preserve their Korean roots, you know, as
Mhm.
seen. Oh, roots. Haha, good one, James. 'Cause
Whoa.
Um,
Damn.
literally, you know, trying to preserve their Korean roots by growing Korean vegetables in the farm. But also, you know, the parents primarily speak Korean, and then the kids are the most Americanized. They speak primarily English, and you know, the daughter is very eager to like go to church and make friends at church, and we see David have a sleepover with his white friends with nasty tobacco teeth. That was a really
Oh,
lovely scene to me, by
gross.
the way. I loved seeing like a sort of culture swap happening where David teaches the white boy how to play the card game, and the
Mhm.
white boy like sort of shows David cowboy culture and, you know, chewing tobacco, which is a very, I mean, it's bad for kids to do, but obviously the symbol of chewing tobacco is a very like classic American thing. So I, you know, that was more of a tangent. I thought that scene was really nice and a good way to. I'm glad we didn't just have one-off scenes with the white kids from church and that was it.
Mhm.
Like I'm glad we got to see a little more of that.
Yeah, well, the thing that's particularly potent about that whole relationship is that that's just the reality for a lot of not just immigrants, but just Asian Americans, where you'll have these kids sort of make fun of your cultural values or make fun of you for the way or for the stuff that you eat during lunch or things like that, and then just ask to, you know, have a sleepover, you know, have a fun thing. And you're like going to the house of your racial, you know, abuser essentially or like a racist, and it's strange because you're right. It is entirely the fact that these kids are ignorant. They're not like actively racist. I don't think that they hate it. It's rather than they
Yeah.
just don't know what's the proper way to express, you know, differences in culture. But it is a very interesting thing because it's something that a lot of, you know, people still have to do today. And the movie has a lot of other different things that are very common, at least to my understanding, in a bunch of Korean American families specifically. That stick thing where you have to get the stick that you're gonna get
Oh
beat
yeah.
with. I hear that that's something that's pretty common, and that is one of the most brutal forms of child punishment I've ever heard of.
It's
Like,
just spanking,
Yeah.
but with a stick instead, right?
you have to grab it.
Oh, yeah, the mental aspect of that is
You
rough.
have to bring your implement of punishment and
And
be
that's
like,
another example of how this film that's something I wanted to say. That's another example of when this film builds up this tension that you're gonna see this, you know, beautiful darling boy David just get, you know, a
"True."
whooping. And then it undercuts it and you know, they take a moment when he brings in the flimsy like blade of, you know, wheat or whatever. It undercuts it with this humor that's something that's I think is super constant throughout the film and I really liked because I would have to be honest, as a viewer, I would have hated to see David get spanked. I would have
Mhm.
Yeah.
absolutely despised that because I don't need more stories of these people's pain. I mean, I'll just say it a million times. You know, as important as it is to raise light to social struggles and stuff, I think there's sort of a weird. We're gonna get meta here. If the only stories you can tell about minorities are like about racism, that's not racist, but it's like it's almost as if you're saying this is the only kind of story that these characters and people are good for, you know?
Whoa,
Like
Yeah.
minorities, I mean,
I'm with you,
right?
man.
Right?
Yeah,
Like
I'm with you.
by
Yeah.
assuming that the only stories that these people can be in are about their struggles and purely about their race identity, you undercut the value of those people. Like you wind up doing the opposite of what you set out to do. I think we need more stories about minorities that don't entirely pivot around their race. Even from a storytelling perspective, you can tell a lot more creative stories when you're not trying to make all of them about the same thing. Like,
Mm.
I mean, Minari, obviously, race and culture are huge in Minari, but I think at the same time, it's a perfect example of how to honor culture and share the stories of these people while also, I mean, just telling a creative story about these people, like as humans, you know, not as caricatures. So
Yeah.
I think Minari did an incredible job, and more movies should follow its lead on how to blend, you know, raising questions about social issues while also telling a deeply emotional and human story that everyone can relate to.
Yeah, but that's like the genius of this movie, right? That's why this movie I think is being nominated for the Oscar is because it's an immigrant story that for some reason people have been too afraid to tell, and it's probably because hey, we don't actually give a lot of director positions to people of color or minorities. Wow, shocker. And you would probably be surprised at the amount of minority-led films that probably don't have a minority director. Wow, shocker. So the fact that this was like in a very predominantly Asian American production is
Yes.
super important, and the fact that we're finally giving the tools of creative storytelling to people that have been deprived of that for a very long time is important, because I assure you that if there were not white execs at like Blumhouse or Universal, Antebellum would not have been made. Like there are like just because there are minorities acting in like these struggle pieces or whatever you want to call them, that doesn't mean that it has been signed off by those minorities. Like, it is predominantly a studio thing, which movies made or which movies get made and which movies don't, and still studios have a very bad race and diversity problem. So be very careful when you're looking at all this stuff, and when you see indie movies like this, know that it's because A24 is an indie studio and will let these filmmakers tell their unadulterated stories. And if you see anything coming out of Universal or things like that, and it is like Minari in the sense that it tells a pretty true and pretty uplifting story about immigrants that doesn't have to directly deal with all of those negative things that they constantly experience, that's probably a big step forward and a sign that we're going in the right direction. But
That's a good point. It's a really
Yeah.
good point.
off my soapbox.
And I feel like that's just a really like those are really good points on what truly is diversity. Like diversity, as we've seen in like the last few years, like diversity isn't about just like smacking a whole bunch of like one-dimensional people of color in your movies, because even like what I don't remember who said it, but being like caricatures of who those like people are, like you're not making them a character, you're just putting them in there to like check a box. So I feel like actual like diversity is putting people of color in leading roles with actual like character development. Like you can have a black person in a movie without having them be like the funny black best friend or the
Yeah.
gay back bless or like the
Yeah.
like the counselor, or you don't have to have the insanely smart like Asian American to just fit the like, oh, the model minority, like yada yada yada, like all that stuff, because that's not true. Like you think that, like as James was saying, like you think that you're doing something, but really you're just enhancing and stabilizing these already like super prevalent stereotypes of these people by just locking them further into boxes. But now you're just putting them at the front of your movie, which is still like it's still a problem, and
Mhm.
I think that Minari's like just yeah,
I
it's just great.
I think, I mean, obviously, diversity has been getting much better in film landscape, and I think it sort of went in steps. We went from like pure stereotypes, pure side character stereotypes, which is everything like older than the last like 5-10 years, And then we get more movies, with black leads and black directors and marginalized communities. But they're all sort of telling not the same story, but for the most part, many of them are focused on, like we've sort of been talking about, like the pain and the struggles and all that, which are important. But now I think Minari is sort of like signaling that we're finally getting to the point where we have actual diversity, where we have not only diverse casts and characters, but diverse stories,
Yeah.
Like, not every black movie has to be about the oppressed slave who's, or whatever period of black struggle you want to talk about, like same story, different decade, right? I think it's a really good thing that we're finally starting to move forward. And across, I mean, I'm seeing this more and more. I saw a trailer for, I think it's called Concrete Cowboys, with Caleb McLaughlin and Idris Elba. That looks incredible. It's about it's about a real life group of basically cowboys who lived in the city, and it just looks incredible. It's like, wow, here's this diverse film that's telling a unique and creative story that I think looks really, really appealing. I'm really, really excited that we're moving to a point where we can celebrate cultures and people without just focusing on all their struggles. We can celebrate them for their victories and their unique stories.
Preach. I agree 100%. And guess which movie we've talked about has already done that?
Which one?
A little bit of a Socratic cinema history lesson. James, you should know this one.
Oh,
you should.
I'm excited. I don't know where you're going.
Into the Spider-Verse, ladies and gentlemen.
Yo!
One of the best movies containing a minority lead in the form of Miles Morales. I forget who does the voice for him, but what a beautiful story about just having somebody of color do something great and cool and awesome and be inspiring, especially. Like, Miles Morales is someone to look up to and to want to be. And not once in that movie did they touch on any of his struggles because of his race or things like that. They just let Miles be a superhero. They let him be inspiring.
Right. Yeah. And it's not, I guess I want to make sure, like, I'm not encouraging filmmakers to ignore marginalized people's struggles, right? Not at all.
Yeah.
It's just that, like, you don't want to put yourself in that box, that, like, you have to tell a social justice story, right? Like, I'm personally excited to see Black Urban Cowboy Story. Like, that sounds great, incredible to me.
Yeah, no, tons of great stories, I think, are certainly coming out, and we should be very, very excited to see them. I knew about that Concrete Cowboy Story. I had no clue what it was about, though. So is it just like they're just cowboys in the streets or something?
They're like, it's like I don't know. It's based on a real thing, but I just saw the trailer once. It's like this group of people who live in the city, but like ride horses and live the cowboy lifestyle. And I think it's sort of about, unchanged men in changing times, that whole thing. Like, oh, they're
gotcha.
I remember this line in the trailer. They're like, they're trying to take away our horses. And so Caleb McLaughlin is like, his dad's, the cowboy boss, and Caleb doesn't want to live the cowboy life, but it's about learning to live the cowboy life. It looks so, like, there was this scene in the trailer of him, like, learning how to ride the horse, and oh my gosh, you guys have no clue how excited I am.
Lil Nas X better be doing the soundtrack for that movie. If he's not, that is a missed opportunity.
If I hear Old Town Road, I'm leaving. I'm standing up asking for a refund.
Old Town Road is incredible. I don't want to hear it.
I got the horses in the back.
Yeah.
Horse lock is attached.
Yeah, what is that word that he says? I always thought it was like horse tag is attached or horse stack is attached.
I don't know.
We don't know.
Oh, guys, wait, we forgot a segment for this episode. Are we going to do a Socratic Smackdown for the characters?
No, please. All would start smacking dudes with his cross.
Yeah, no, I take him. He's mine.
He just
literally made the strength training. True. Or you get the dude with the wishbone finder, and he could like find weapons with that or something, and he'd be able to win. But
he's like a support class.
Support healer.
Wait, you just reminded me with the wishbone guy. Let's talk about the American dream. Is that okay with you guys? Because that's I think an important thing in this movie.
I love disillusionment.
See, that's the thing. That's the thing is I don't know that I mean, it is, but at the same time, I think this is like a quintessential American story. I mean, this reminded me a lot of something that like Steinbeck would write, like a more progressive Steinbeck story, you know? Like these downtrodden people trying to make a new life out in the country. And I mean, they face trials and they overcome and there's a conflict between the family and the dream. But I think that's like this just felt like a very, very classic, hopeful, weird little celebration of combining your traditional culture with like, I feel weird saying the American dream so much, but I don't know. I see Charlie, you mentioned about how like you think this movie's showing how the American dream can come into conflict with having a family. And I see that, but what I read it as is how in the beginning of the film Jacob, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
David. No, yeah, Jacob. Sorry, that was embarrassing. Is how Jacob is very reluctant to accept help from the community around him. He shoos off the money, the wishbone well finder, and he digs the well himself. And we see how that gets him into a load of trouble when the well runs dry. And he's very weirded out by Paul, and he doesn't want to do things Paul's way, and he's like angry when Paul comes and blesses the house. Um, and he's just very self-reliant. Like I think Jacob's thing is like he doesn't want to accept help from those around him. And so to me, this story was learning about how like to pursue your American dream, like you don't do it alone. Like it's about learning to accept the community and your family and how you all, work together towards a more collective American dream, I guess. That was sort of what I got out of it. And I thought that's why the scene at the end of them, if going back to the wishbone guy and finding the well that way, but this time Paul's there and the wife's there, was sort of a symbol of how at the beginning Jacob shuns away the community and is going to try and get this dream on his own. And he sort of through the struggles has to learn to accept help from his family and realize that, to make your dream come true, you need to the community is sort of integral. And that was sort of my reading of it.
Interesting. Kasey, what do you think? Because I have some thoughts, but I want to let you go first.
I think James is on like the right track. I don't know if I agree like wholeheartedly because I think for Jacob's character, he was very in the beginning, I could see kind of like this mindset that I feel like is very common with immigrants and just people coming to America for a better life. Like it's all about how successful you can be and how
Mm.
you're going to essentially like make up for the sacrifices that you made to come here. Which I guess is kind of leading into the American dream, but it also kind of it just ruins it a little bit because I'm
Mm.
like very like, oh man, the American dream kind of sucks. Just like in general. But I don't know. I feel like it's very, very interesting, especially once you get to the ending where like especially after the fight with the quote of Monica saying like, oh, I mean, we agreed that we were going to like save each other. And then in the like barn burning thing, they actually like did save each other. And
Mm.
then like, oh, that was just so beautiful to me.
That was cool.
And then afterwards, as James was saying, like then they kind of like come together and like she's more involved in the farm and he's being more I think like attentive to her like opinions about what's going on because he, as James was saying, is very like, no, we're doing it my way. This is how I feel. Like this is how you do it, like the Korean way, or this is how you do it the successful way. And he's not really taking other people's emotions into account or just advice in general. But overall, I think I would agree that the American dream is kind of what you actually like make of it, which I think
Yeah.
is kind of like it kind of comes back to like a chosen family type beat where it's like you can choose who you want to be around and who you want as your family and as your community. And then that's how you kind of build yourself up to be the most successful.
Very
Yeah.
true. Very true. Well, I would agree with you. I don't think I vibe 100% with the idea of even like this being a story about community building. Because if we look at the two works that you said, James, if we look at Grapes of Wrath and Minari, both of them are refutations of the American dream. Like Grapes of Wrath and this movie both end at the low point. Like they both end after, there was supposed to be an American success and then it failed. Like they couldn't win because of it. Like for Grapes of Wrath, it's that a giant, and actually in both, it's sort of like a natural disaster almost. In Grapes of Wrath, it's a giant flood that washes away all of their progress. In Minari, it's a fire that burns down all of the crops. And there is the assumption that they will go back and try again. But I think in both movies, they're calling out the sort of unequal way that people have to success within America. Because it would be so much easier for someone with wealth, like if you're just born wealthy, to succeed. Like you're sort of already born succeeding.
Yeah.
But for these immigrants, it's much, much harder to do that. And I think a good way to look at how the movie is talking about the American dream is to look at the symbol of water in this movie. Because water is very important to the family. After all, it's what sustains their crops. It's what makes their home livable. And throughout the movie, lots of different things are happening with that water. If we look at the way that they're farming in the movie, we see that, as the farm grows and grows and grows, the crops are running dry. There's not enough water to bring around to people. And in fact, when the crops are running dry, they're using so much water on them to try and get them wet that now the house has no water. They can't use anything in there. And the way that I see it.
There he goes.
Oh, Charlie, come back.
Charlie, you left the call. Dang, because I had something to say too. Hold on, I'm gonna call up Chuck. Hey, what happened?
Internet just like straight crashed.
Oh, dang.
So good. I will join in back when I can.
Okay. We'll be waiting.
So I think a really great way to look at the American dream in this movie is to sort of analyze the symbol of water, right? Because water is a resource that this family is using to survive, right? We see that it is both what allows the family to have, flowing water, their toilets run, their sinks are going inside their house, and it's also what allows their crops to grow. And specifically, you see a lot of tension with how this water, this finite resource, is used. When the father is trying to grow the farm, trying to expand his American dream, he's using up a lot of water. And in fact, he uses up so much water, the well runs dry, the crops start, drying up and not getting as wet. And the house actually loses all access to like its regulatory functions, right? Like, or sorry, not its regulatory functions, its regular functions of like, water and things like that. So we have this finite resource drying up as this man is unable to provide for his family, as he's unable to reach this American dream. And this water, I feel like, is almost like faith in the American dream. I think that's sort of what it's representing, or at least success in relation to faith, because we see that water is actually something that the family uses to be successful. Look at where the Minari grows. It grows next to the stream. It grows where there's tons of flowing and running water. We see that the boy learns through water that he's stronger than he thinks because he picks up the pails and he can carry them across the place. So water is acting as this thing that the family uses to test themselves and to get better. But when it starts running dry, things start, happening poorly. So I think that really, because water is such a finite resource, it's trying to show that you can put a lot of faith into your farm, but that has to come at the cost of faith in your family, or at least like, a connected and conjoined family. So people need to be very careful, I think, after seeing this movie, in realizing that, if you have a dream that you need to succeed at, you need to consider the relationships within your life and make sure that those grow and stay healthy. Because it is possible. We see that Minari, or that in the plant of Minari, dreams and community can come together into one thing and actually be successful and grow. And that might end up being what actually saves the family. And now they have a crop to actually sell to people because of that.
Yeah, and
really
I think that's what the final scene is sort of the coming together of the farm and the family, with the dad and the son picking the Minari. And that's like, the last bountiful crop. I think what it comes down to here is that I think we have different ideas of what I guess the American dream is. Like, I see what you're saying about how like this and Grapes of Wrath and even of Mice and Men would be like disillusionment of the American dream. If you think of the American dream as like, you come here, you have success, you get rich, easy clap, the end, Um, but I mean, I don't know. To me, the like American dream or the American story, if you will, is one of hardship and struggle and failure, but always coming back. Like it's a perseverance story, which I guess maybe isn't the archetypal American dream that you think of. But I mean, the whole thing you hear people say is that like, hard work pays off and all that. But I mean, it was never said, I guess, that hard work pays off instantly or that hard work pays off without obstacles. And I feel like, I mean, obviously, there are massive problems with the idea of the American dream. I mean, like you were saying, people born into wealth have a much easier time, and groups of people have been systemically disadvantaged from pursuing their American dream. But I think I believe in a more transcendent American dream. That sort of, I guess, is not the same one that is so disillusioned in a lot of Steinbeck stuff, and even to an extent in Minari, but more like just that idea of community and perseverance in spite of hardship, and making something for yourself and your family. Like that to me is I guess the American story. And so when I saw that in Minari, because I did see that in Minari, it made it feel like a lot of those Steinbeck stories, which also in my mind are symbols of the American ethos of perseverance and stuff. So I think we may have different ideas, I guess, of what the American dream is. I don't know. I'm an optimist. I see the positive angles of everything.
Sure. I mean, I will always think that Steinbeck is refuting the American dream and all this.
I think he's refuting that notion of the American dream, but he's supporting, a different one. Right? Because his stories are all about, I mean, Grapes of Wrath, at least, to continue with that story's all about how people have to stick together and stick with one another to survive and grow and continue to live.
Like, it ends in failure, though, as does in...
I would disagree.
Grapes of Wrath, they lose everything in a flood, and then they're forced to hide in a barn with someone, and then she has to feed this guy breast milk to keep him alive.
Yeah,
that's what the American dream has forced these people to do. They came here seeking that. They were unable to get it because they didn't realize all of the socioeconomic problems that go into actually achieving the American dream when you have nothing in the first place. And then they're put into a place that was honestly worse than where they started, even in the Dust Bowl area. They grew, successful when they worked with people, but at the end, that success was undercut by something that was outside of their control, whether it be a natural event or a socioeconomic, disaster.
I see the end of Grapes of Wrath as a hopeful ending. I intrinsically see it as, I mean, that final scene, I think, is like affirming that people, despite all the garbage trash going on around them, will continue to fight for one another and stick together and care for each other. And I think Minari is exactly the same way. I mean, they end off worse than when they started in Minari, at least logistically, but they gain this semblance of community and perseverance. That I feel like is the real American story, not a false idea that maybe in previous generations was pushed. I don't know. I feel like we're in an age where we can find a new American dream that's a little less capitalistic and a little more perseverance and that sort of thing. But this is turning into a Grapes of Wrath debate really fast.
I know. I was like, dang, a Socratic smackdown
on Grapes of Wrath.
It's not an episode of the Socratic Cinema podcast if Charlie and I don't disagree on something.
This is true. It wouldn't be interesting otherwise.
Aye. But I don't know. Does anyone have any parting words? And I guess we'll just have to leave it up to the viewer to decide. Is Minari a rejection of the classical American dream, or is it the embracing of a different sort of American dream? You decide. And also, did you like Grapes of Wrath? I don't know. I thought it was kind of boring for like the first 500 pages, but that third act really picks up, So let us know in the comments down below.
That's one way to say it.
Hey, man, overall, that book was a net positive for me. But I think we're going to have to wrap it up here pretty soon. We might have to enter into the Steven Spiel zone. So does anyone have... Riley, put an air horn sound effect there. Oh, shoot. We never gave our out of 10s. For me, Minari... I'm gonna give this bad boy like a 9. I really, really, really liked
Ooh.
and agree with what a lot of Minari had to say.
Jeez, Casey.
I give it an 8.5.
And
That's nice.
I give it a 7.
Oh, fair enough.
Oh, okay. We're all in like the same range though.
I think
happy
it's a
with
good
it.
movie. I think it's a good movie. I don't think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Oh no. But with that being said, you be the arbiter of whether Minari was good or not. Let us know in the comments if you think it's going to win any Oscars, what you think it'll win. I'm rooting for it winning Best Score. This score was fabulous.
Oh, yes.
But thank you so much for listening to another episode of the one and only By the Youth for the Youth film podcast, Socratic Cinema. Make sure if you enjoyed the episode to like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts so you get new episodes every time they come out, every single Saturday. You can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and have your review written out on the show. It's a lot of fun. Read out on the show is what I meant to say. It's a lot of fun and we like doing it a lot. So consider leaving a review. It really helps us out. If you want to support the podcast monetarily, if you feel so inclined, you can find our Patreon at patreon.com/Socratic Cinema. For as low as $1 a month, you can help support the podcast and move on to bigger and better enterprises and help us find our own American dream, huh? Because you need a little moolah to get it done, as we learned in Minari. You need a little shmoney. So I'm sorry, that was rude. If you feel it in your heart, if you feel the call in your heart to support your local film podcast, then consider becoming a patron. It really helps us out and lets us elevate our quality and buy more movies to watch. So, consider it. If not, hey, no biggie. I understand money's tight. I got you. Go get your own American dream, cowboy. But I think that's pretty much it. You can find all our social media links on our website at socraticcinema.com and check out that WordPress magic while you're there. I don't know, guys. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you spieled a perfect amount.
Hey, they call me Steven Spielberg.
I can't believe you said that.
All right, baby. Let's wrap it up here, everyone. Thank you so much for listening again, and we'll see you next week with maybe another Oscar contender. To be honest, we haven't decided yet. So, be on the lookout for that. All right. Thank you so much. We've been the Socratic Cinema Podcast.
Adios.
Adios.